All right, Manu, we're not live, but we're live. So take it away whenever you'd like to introduce yourself and get
Yeah,
started.
for sure. Hey, y'all. I'm Manu. I'm currently a product manager at All Trails. And I've been in the product management capacity for about 5 years now. My background is at Zillow and at Tesla as well. At Zillow, I was part of a rotational program is business operations where I focused on biz ops for about the first 6 months and then did product for the latter year and a half of my time there. And I focused on products within Zillow offers, Premier Agent, and social impact spaces. And at Tesla, I worked more within the B2B space in their supply chain management, internal tools systems. So, really helped drive supplies all the way from procurement to delivery. And yeah, like I mentioned, I'm currently at All Trails. I've been here for about a year and a half now, working on the trail page experience. But yeah, super excited to be here.
Cool. No, you have such a good variety of experiences for sure. I'm curious, Manu,
Yeah, it's a
how did
mishmash.
you how did you discover like product management was even a role within your company, and kind of get your way over there? Because I know for me it was very just by chance. Like I was working on a project and there was a product manager in the room one day at one of our, like cross-functional meetings, and I they just talked and I was like, oh, let me talk to them afterwards. And it was kind of lucky that I, was there. But I'm curious how you discovered it. Was it one of the core rotations in the Zillow experience, or did you kind of find it yourself?
Yeah, I think it's a bit of both. I feel like a lot of PMs often say that they just kind of landed here, and I feel the exact same way. One of the benefits of a rotational program is that they really force you to go out and network for yourself to figure out what you want your next 2, 3 rotations to be. And I did very much the same. So in my first 6 months at Zillow, I did a bunch of coffee chats with finance folks, marketing folks, product folks, obviously, and product sounded the most intriguing because it's cliche, but being able to
Uh-huh.
to own your own small part of the business, I think, is what it's sold to us as oftentimes. And
Right.
I very much was enamored by that, like a lot of PMs are. So yeah, I started out by interviewing for one of the PMs in the Zillow offer space. We loved each other. I still talk to him. I actually talked to him yesterday. Um, and I worked more in I want to say almost like an operational product role. It was very like Amazonian
Mm.
product. And then after that, I was like, ooh, enjoyed that. Would love to be more focused on the tech side. And so my next rotation ended up being a little bit more focused on the software development side, where we're actually working on the agent facing portal that Zillow had built out. And then last rotation there was focused on our social impact network,
Mm-hmm.
where we were trying to connect folks who are houseless with lower income rental units that they could be matched with, which was something that I was really passionate
Right.
about. And it was really hard for
Yeah.
me to decide at the end of my time there whether I wanted to stay on longer or switch to Tesla. So, yeah, that's how I got into it.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. Definitely. How did so you ultimately ended up deciding to go to Tesla, which is like totally
Yeah.
different industry, totally different type of company than Zillow. How did you translate those experiences from Zillow to specifically working in product at Tesla?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what I said during my interview there. I think at Tesla they were just looking for people who were really willing to work in an incredibly fast-paced environment and
Hmm.
be able to kind of jump in wherever they were needed. Even though Tesla is a huge company, I very much think it still operates as a startup where even as a PM, you're
Hmm.
expected to kind of at one point I was a UX designer and a program manager and an analyst all in one. And
Yeah.
so being able to kind of state your skills in those areas previously, but also display your enthusiasm for kind of doing whatever is needed. I think was what Tesla was really looking for, and I think that's how I translated from Zillow to Tesla.
So, did you have to sleep at the floor of the factory? How many times?
Oh my gosh, never. I took the shuttle at 5:30 every day I was out. The
Oh my
benefit I
god.
think was, I think I had come to Tesla a little post-COVID, and so they were a little bit calmer
Mhm.
with the work from home policy then, but by the end, I was going in 5 days a week, and
Yeah,
it got a little much, I think.
a little much. Cool. Yeah, so I'd love to know maybe more specifically at All Trails, since that is your current role, like what is the overall kind of strategic process looking like at your company? Is it more top down, driven by executives? Is it more bottom up, driven by the product managers and direct customer feedback? Um, and is it more product driving? Like, is it a product led company? Is it a design led company? Or is it engineering or marketing led? Would love to know your take on this.
Yeah. I would say that product definitely drives core strategy at all trails, all the way from putting the roadmap
Mhm.
together to execution. You're very much involved every step of the way. And the way it'll typically work is either you as a PM will have a feature that you know has kind of been needing a refresh, or someone in executive leadership will have mentioned how a certain feature hasn't been touched in 3 to 4 years. So could be bottom up, could be top down. I think there's a mix of both. But either way, it's very product and user research driven. Um, I will say I do think business and marketing also play a part. You know, we usually plan for a half, and we have a couple of goals
Mhm.
that we're trying to meet during the half. Right? Is it an engagement goal that we're setting for ourselves? Is it ARR? Is it conversion? Is it retention? And also, are there any like really big go to market moments that we need to meet? You know, Fourth of July is a really big go to market for us because everyone's out and hiking.
Yeah.
So it's Memorial Day, and so we tend to ship a lot of our biggest features then. But always at the background, it's the product that's driving kind of a lot of those key decisions. And the way that the road mapping process works overall is you have some of those ideas. Product will take it back. We'll write one pagers where we just focus on big picture strategy. Oftentimes, we'll collaborate with design to create some MVP mocks and talk to engineering to get some really low fidelity sizing. And then we'll start collaborating with our program management org to actually start plotting out our roadmap. Based on where
Got
things
it.
need to fall. So it's a lot of Jenga, a lot of Tetris, and a lot of final decisions, I'd say, are still made at an executive level. But
Mhm.
product is the one that's kind of offering up variant one, two, and three of what the roadmap could look like. And here's kind of the drawbacks and pros and cons of each approach that we're taking. And only once you've
Makes
landed our
sense.
roadmap will product then start working with our pod to kind of start building out the actual features. So that's how it really works here.
Got it. Okay, so it sounds like first you have to make sure like your stuff gets on the roadmap. If it's not on the roadmap, it's not necessarily going to be worked on, right? And
Probably
then,
not. Yeah. There's always air pockets, but it's
yeah,
yeah, up in the air.
how in terms of like roadmap planning, you're planning for 6 months of the year at a time, but how far out is the overall vision being set for? Is it, you're working on the next 6 months in your current 6 months, or is there some overlap where there's a few PMs who are driving things that are maybe 12, 24 months out, and then there are some more smaller short-term ones that are getting placed on the roadmap 3, 6, 9 months out?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'd say at a vision level and at a company-wide level, we're usually thinking 2 to 3 years out of what we want
Hmm.
All Trails to be, right? Like,
Hmm.
so we'll say next year we want All Trails to be the number one hiking app, but the year after that we want All Trails to be the number one outdoors app.
I see.
So we definitely have like an overall vision that's a couple years out, but like you mentioned, there's a lot of different features that we're shipping that we know will provide results on a 3, 6, 9 month basis. And actually, one thing we're trying to do is move away from the 6 month planning process to more of a rolling planning,
Ah,
which I
okay.
think I'm really excited for because I don't think 6 months is as effective when the market shifts so often, right? And you need to be
Yeah,
able to kind of react to it really quickly.
yeah,
And so that's the ideal that we're trying to land.
yeah. No, totally agree with that. I'm curious
Right.
then, within your kind of 6 month periods, um, how do you describe uh, the balance between engineering, design, and product management in terms of how you collaborate together, what the responsibility breakdown is. Because I know some companies that product management and marketing kind of go hand in hand. They handle different parts of the funnel, just of themselves. Some places are way more design led. So just curious, how's the collaboration, and where do kind of the boundaries get drawn at All Trails?
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say product definitely touches like every single part of the business.
Uh-huh.
I think at Altriel's product is more focused around the design org. Actually this we all report up to the CPO, like the UX research, the design, and the product org, and then marketing
Hmm.
sits separately, engineering sits separately, finance sits separately, and so because of the way that we're organized, I think we typically tend to think of design and product going hand in
Yeah.
hand more than product and marketing or product and business.
Got it.
So
Hmm.
I think that's where a lot of the collaborations happening earlier on. But of course, like you have to be working with engineering constantly the entire time as well, right? And so
Yeah.
it's not just the case that we come to engineering to execute. We're definitely trying to take their input into account when we're even setting the roadmap, right? Because we can't be promising a feature in 6 months if it's going to take 12 months to build.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say that's like the three-legged stool at All Trails is product design and engineering.
Totally. Yeah. No, no, that makes total sense. And I'm curious, like, in terms of like the level of technical depth that you're expected to have as a PM at All Trails. I know it varies so much, company to company. Some companies are much more design focused with their PMs, and some are purely technical, no business really at all. Where on the spectrum does All Trails fall on average?
Yeah, I would say we're more on the business side than the technical side.
Hmm.
Um, because I think you have to have some level of technical knowledge. Have to know what a server is and what a client is, and just
Okay.
that general jargon that I
Uh
think
huh.
you just gain as you work more in tech. But I don't think you're expected to know all the ins and outs. And we luckily have a fantastic engineering team here that's incredibly collaborative and super humble and really easy to ask questions to. But I do think mentioning again that we're more on the business side, that PMs are expected to be able to be very analytical minded, where if you're pitching a product, you're expected to also know, how much ARR is this going to bring? Is this going to drive our average days active? Like, why are you pitching this? And what are the key metrics and how are we going to measure them? So, um, I think in that way, it's a little bit more business minded.
Totally. Cool. I want to dig in now and go like, down from like the overall and 6 month thing down into more of like the day to day, week over week sort of time frame. And one of the things I talk about in the course is like how varied the tasks that PMs actually do are, whether it's actually interviewing a customer to working with business functions or finance team or literally sitting in engineering design sessions. I'm really curious, like, what is the makeup of your role? Obviously, it's going to probably change depending on where in the life cycle the product is, but what are those key collaboration points, and also, yeah, just depending on where in the product, like what are the type of things that you're doing on a daily basis?
Yeah. So totally hit the nail on the head. I think it depends on where along the product development life cycle the feature is, but you're typically working on several different features at one time that are all at different phases. So earlier on in the process, right after we've kind of decided that this feature should sit on the roadmap, you'll be doing a lot of like weekly workshops with our CPO to help refine the design of the
Hmm.
of the actual feature and what it should really look like and how it should work. So answering a lot of like fundamental questions about what the flows will look like. Once we landed in a good spot with executive leadership, product will then take it back and spend some heads down time on writing up a product requirement document where you've kind of laid out, these are the requirements, these are P1, P2, P3s. You also decide like these are some engineering spikes that need to happen at this time for us to even get a better sense of how much work this is going to take from our engineering team. And then once that's all decided, engineering will write up their own requirements document, and then we'll work together to kind of break it out further into smaller tickets, fit things into sprints, and prioritize further in case some things need to be in several phases. Um, and then I think one also essential step is like working with analytics. During all of this, we
Okay.
typically launch our features as experiments because you
Hmm.
want to be able to prove how much of an impact your feature has made. And so a lot of A/B testing is also happening. And so making sure that we've set up our experiment plan and we know how long it's going to take to run it, as well as again getting really clear sense of what our key metrics for success are here, and are setting up like a decision tree of what's going to happen if our guardrails go up, for example, or if we're not as successful as we think we're going to be. Um, so yeah, once we've developed the product, then we're going to get geared up for launch. And I usually spend this time to talk to our internal teams, our customer relationship teams, our internal tools teams, our international team, marketing teams, to really make sure that they're set up for launch so that they can answer any
Hmm.
questions that come up. And also marketing can work on their go-to-market messaging. And then once we've launched, hooray,
Yeah.
we will measure the experiment and then work with analytics to kind of help spread our results and what our learnings are and what next steps should be. So I would say that's the day to day. Obviously, peppered in with that is
Yeah.
a lot of meetings. I have a lot of one-on-ones, a lot of strategy meetings, analytics meetings, that take up my time. But for the most part, like this is
Yeah.
my day to day.
Yeah, I mean, it's totally clear that product is definitely involved at every step of the journey. I'm curious for you, like, where do you enjoy the most? You know, is it the launch? Is it the analytics or the customer research side? Um, like, where do you find the most joy in your work?
Yeah, I actually really love the part of product where we haven't even decided what to build yet.
Uh-huh.
And we know we have a problem that we need to
Hmm.
solve. I love collaborating with our UX researchers to actually set up studies with our key customer bases and doing, putting sticky notes on a whiteboard to try to figure out like, here are
Uh-huh.
our key problems. And um, that like brainstorming process I think is by far the most interesting to me. I think it's also um, where you as a product manager can gain the most insight into like
Hmm.
understanding your users. And I
Hmm.
think like doing that sort of research not only helps you on the specific feature you're currently trying to build, but also like what your overall vision should be for your product 2 3 years from now.
Totally. Do you feel like, in that space, do you feel like most of the ideas for, that you work on come from your own experience hiking and using the app, or do they come mostly from things you hear directly from customers through these interviews?
Yeah. We actually have at All Trails like a trail day every month where we get the first Friday off of each month to go hike and use the
Amazing.
app. And so a ton of ideas come out of that within the company
Uh-huh.
itself. Obviously a lot of bugs, but
Yeah.
also just like really cool ideas have come out of it. But then I think we also are blessed with an incredibly enthusiastic user base. I love
Totally.
the All Trails Reddit and all
Uh-huh.
the hiking groups we have on Facebook. And so I think we're really lucky and we have a good mix of both internal product ideas and also external ones. And we definitely use both in deciding what to build next.
Yeah. Yeah, I think now we can do the your presentation on user research, and I think that ties in nicely with what we were just chatting about too. So whenever you're ready, take
Totally.
it away.
So I'd love to talk to you all about why do user research as a PM. It's something that's very near and dear to my heart. And so a couple of reasons why I think why as a PM more than why as a UX researcher or why as a marketer to do research is really to empathize with your users, right? As a PM, you truly need to understand what your users' main issues are with either the existing features that exist out there or with your feature as it exists today. And you really need to understand your product's main strengths and weaknesses. What is it that they complain about all the time? What is it that they love about it? And I think by understanding those two things, you can really help decide what your product roadmap should be um, in the future. So those are definitely some of the reasons why, but I think there's a ton to keep thinking about. And one of the main questions I get is, we do user research, but it kind of just sits there and no one at our company does anything with it. And so, how can I really use research to help influence my product roadmap? And my take on this is that I truly believe that research can be just as compelling as any quantitative data out there.
Mhm.
I think anecdotal evidence is can oftentimes make a case um, just as clearly as any A/B experiment can. And a couple of examples of that I've put on the left. These are all obviously examples, but real cases of stats that we've pulled from our own research when we've tried to make a case for a certain feature launch. So, for example, we knew that 66% of our Plus user base didn't even know that we offered a certain premium feature. And so, being able to make a case for up leveling a certain Plus feature that we knew had some potential. We also knew that like there was a certain feature on our app that people keep writing into us about and we know we need to improve on, so being able to call that out via research as well was super impactful when we got this feature onto the roadmap. But also knowing like X% of our user base comes to our website just for a certain feature, knowing that a feature is part of our bread and butter, I think can also help drive getting it on the roadmap. So really take the research that exists, or do the research on your own to help shape your narrative and make your case, and think about how you can take a research insight that exists and build a feature on it. One example is what I just mentioned. Trail conditions we knew was something that is a major gripe for our users. There's really no good product out there that will be able to tell you exactly what the weather is like on a trail right before you head out on it. At most, you'll get weather on a citywide level or a park-wide level, but there's no way to know, hey, like Snow Lake today is going to be super icy and you're going to need to, be careful before you head out on it. So I was able to, we've actually done two versions of it now. And for the MVP of the product, in order to make a case for why we should build on it further, we were able to look into using UGC reviews that people had written about the trail itself in the past week, and look for keywords like muddy, slippery, icy, and help pull those
Mhm.
out and highlight them on the trail pages that they were relevant to, so that users
Mhm.
would know when they took the trail page right before they headed out that, hey, this trail is going to be slippery or muddy. And we were able to build on that using actual weather data for V2 of that product. So that's an example of how we've actually used true user research to help build out a completely new feature that didn't exist before. And lastly, what can user research look like, right? So at smaller companies, you may or may not have a user research department. And if that's the case, I would say try running smaller scale studies yourself. There's resources out there like SurveyMonkey, Qualtrics that you can definitely use for free to help set up polls or help find users that could be beta testers of your app. And so I think studies here should very much be focused on gaining product market fit and on getting your feature out into as many folks' hands as you can before you decide this is something that you guys want to ship. Most of my experience has been at medium-sized companies where there is a UX research team. And what I found most helpful is just to get involved. I love asking our UX researchers a bunch of questions about studies that they've done in the past. So delving really deep into previous research. But then also by doing that, you can figure out what answers have not been answered or what questions haven't been answered yet, right? Like what are certain studies that we haven't done. One that we just did recently at All Trails was we have a lot of great research on our app users, but we have very little research on our web users. And
Hmm.
I'm currently working on doing a full redesign of our web trail page. And so I made the case that this was a study that we really should run, is just to figure out what our web trail page users need. So, in
Cool.
doing so, I was able to participate in writing up the user research brief myself and also helping decide what the interview questions should be, and was also able to run sessions myself as well as be an observer. So I find this super helpful because you can then reference certain key points that came up in user testing later on when an executive asks you, hey, like, why didn't you go with this solution? Or why is this button named the way it is? You can say, oh, when we did user
Yeah.
research, no one understood what we meant when we called it, A, B, and C. Instead, they really preferred that we called it X. So
Yeah.
really helps you, I think, later on when you're advocating for your product as well. And then lastly, at larger companies, I think it's a little bit tougher. If it's a really large UX research team. And so I would say just make a case here to get onto your org's research roadmap or just use existing research to help define your future goals. So use the resources that already exist. And then other options in case you can't make it onto that roadmap are to use any we have a tool that we use called Unit Q that helps you search for user sentiment across all of our social media, all of our
Hmm.
app store reviews that you can use to run really like small scale studies on your own, or do some internal research. Talk to your customer relationship team, talk to your internal tools teams. They're often a treasure trove of information because they are talking to users day in and day out.
Yeah.
And same goes for like your social media, just looking at like I mentioned your the Reddit for your company or for your Facebook group can
Yeah.
be really insightful. So get creative and really get in there, and I think you can often find a way to do research on your own. But yeah,
Totally.
that's my little presentation.
Awesome. Awesome, Manu. Couple questions because this sparks like a lot of thoughts in my mind. So I guess the first is, you know, speaking towards at the end, talking with customer relationships or sales. How does user research in your mind differ
Mhm.
from a sales led business team versus a marketing led business team?
Doing user research at a sales led versus marketing led team.
Right. So, like a lot of enterprise software companies are more sales driven, whereas B2C companies tend to be more marketing driven. Those processes of acquiring
Hmm.
customers are so different. Granted, you're still solving people's problems, whether it's a business problem or a life problem, but I'm curious if you see any differences in how user research plays a role in product development and engaging with customers, like between those different types of companies.
Yeah, totally. I would say at sales companies it's actually easier to do than at marketing
Uh
led
huh. Yeah.
companies. So at Zillow, when we were working on selling to agents, we would have a couple of like really power user brokerage teams or power user agent teams that we would often go to
Yeah.
do studies with. And so working with them was fantastic because you've already built this rapport and when you're about to launch a new feature, here's people that we want to come to see if they'd actually use it or not, right? So oftentimes at sales
Yeah.
teams, also you'll also be told user research before whether you want to or not. Hey, like this
Right.
customer wants X, Y, and Z. We need to build it out for them. So
Hmm.
oftentimes I think the case is like prioritizing that research and knowing like what to actually take into account versus what to kind of
Hmm.
leave for now is more of a struggle.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a skill that PMs need to build at B2B companies. Whereas at B2C, it's a little bit tougher because just the quantity of users you have is so
Hmm.
much larger. And you're still getting a lot of that, like, this sucks. Like, why can't you guys fix it?
Right.
But you have to kind of like get through the noise a little bit more. And I think that's the scenario where doing true user testing where you have 50 different users that meet your screening criteria and doing like really unbiased studies with
Hmm.
them can be super helpful, and that's the type of study that All Trails tends to focus on because we're just B2C really.
Totally. Just dig in on two things. The first is like, how do you select your users, and going like
Hmm.
for actually conducting interviews? And then how do you come up with like your framework? Like knowing what questions to ask them without being introducing too much bias or without leading them in the direction that you want to hear about. So just generally like user selection and question curation.
Yeah. When it comes to user selection, I think it's on a case by case basis. We typically tend to search for folks that have used our app before. Our avid users typically fall into a couple of different key demographics, are geographically diverse, are age diverse,
Hmm.
um, use the feature on web versus app. So getting a really diverse set of users, I think, is going to be super important. Also, oh yeah, free versus plus, I think, is super important.
Yeah.
You want to obviously build features for your plus user base, but you can't ignore that most of your users are going to be free. So making sure to gain as many different points of views as you can, I think, is super important when selecting your
Hmm.
users. And luckily, we have a lot of resources that we use to actually send out emails to um, certain users that we think meet those criteria. But if you're smaller, it might be better to just use your network. Like, just reach out to folks that you think might be a great fit for your product, and reach out to them directly, I think, is super helpful. And then your second question, remind me again. Oh yeah, actually creating the interview questions themselves, right? What kind of
Yeah.
framework
Yep.
to use?
Exactly.
Yeah. So again, I've worked with really great user UX researchers, and we've kind of developed our own template that we
Hmm.
typically use, where we'll talk a
Okay.
little bit about we'll sometimes have a prototype, we'll show them that, and we'll just ask them to kind of just go through and tell them, hey, just tell us your initial thoughts about this feature, and then lead them through certain parts of the feature that we want to tap them into. But I think
Okay.
the biggest thing that is typically most difficult, for me at least, is not asking leading questions,
100%.
and
Yeah.
allowing users to tell you their thoughts free form, rather
Hmm.
than helping answer questions in a way that you'd like to hear. Because I'm sure you as a PM want to build this
Totally.
product, but you can't
Yeah.
put that into folks' mouths. So how can you be as unbiased as possible when you're asking questions? I think is the main thing to think about when you're deciding what to ask.
Yeah. I often find that the more closed-ended the question is, the more bias you're probably introducing. Uh, so I try to focus on open-ended questions that let them, if they want to speak specifically about something, they can. If they want to speak broadly, and then also for me, I like to hear about stories. I try to not ask too many
Mm.
questions that can be answered in just one sentence. I kind of want to hear. I like to be taken on a journey by the customer. Like, how do you get to here? What do you feel like when you get here? Like, what do you do if it doesn't work? Those sort of things where they have the opportunity to tell me about the nitty gritty pain that they feel or something like that. Um, I'm curious. Do you have a
Mhm.
favorite question you like to ask that sort of seems to unlock the insight or anything like that?
Um, I love asking, like, after we've done our entire research study, at the very end, just like, are there any features that you'd like us to have to see on our
Hmm.
platform in the next 6 months to a year? And I feel like that definitely helps unlock something, especially for our avid users, because there's definitely a
Hmm.
couple of things that they've been thinking about in the back of their
Hmm.
head that they'd love for us to have. And oftentimes you'll hear a lot of repeats as well, and I think
Yeah.
a lot of those answers can also help create a case, right, for building a new feature. So that's my favorite question by far.
Totally. No, I love it. I love it for sure. I'm curious to know, when you think broadly about your career, how do you approach growing your skills, your knowledge, and your network?
I would say at work, when I think about building my career, I enjoy using my manager and my skip whenever I can. I have monthly career chats that I've set up with them, where we'll talk about, hey, what have I done well in the past few weeks? What should I improve on? And not only just taking that feedback and sitting on it, but like actually doing something with it. So one piece of feedback I had gotten previously was
Mhm.
that my executive communication needed to improve. And so I ended up taking a Stanford class after that online. I
Yeah.
helped, well, I practiced writing different levels of memos to executives versus other stakeholders. And also asked my managers to get
Cool.
feedback from the CPO and CEO after some of my weekly workshops with them. So I think first using the resources that you have closest to you is the
Yeah.
best way to grow. And then past that, in case you haven't built that sort of trust with your manager yet, or you don't want to use those connections, you can definitely take product classes. I definitely have
Hmm.
in the past to kind of help you uncover your own blind spots, but also figure out what parts of product that you really enjoy. And then in terms of building your network, I've done everything everyone else
Yeah.
has. I've done a lot of the LinkedIn
Yeah.
cold DMing, talk to friends of friends. But I think the main thing is just to be really shameless about
Hmm.
utilizing your network, and know that, whatever goes around comes around. So if you're now
Yeah.
in the position where you're in a really great job that you love, being able to like give that back and doing phone calls with folks that are trying to break into product, I think is super important. So those are some of the things that I think I've utilized over the past few years.
How do you approach like finding good companies to do product at? There's a huge variety of experiences out there, some amazing places, some absolutely nightmare places to be a PM. How did you kind of filter that down and figure out this is where I want to work?
I think it's a lot of like first deciding like what kind of PM you want to be. So I think there's a couple of types of PMs, right? There's folks that are focused more on execution, folks that prefer the big picture strategy. And so figuring out what part of product that you like the most can help you really kind of navigate the sea of PM roles that are out there. But
Yeah.
then also like what kind of company do you want to work at? What size of company do you want to work at? Do you prefer larger companies where you're going to have a wide network and potentially gain the chance to uh, get a really deep dive into one specific part of the product, where things might take a little bit longer to ship? Or do you prefer smaller
Yeah.
companies where things are going to be moving a lot faster, where you're going to be wearing a lot of hats but also learning a lot, right? And a little biased, obviously, I think I prefer the smaller
Yeah.
side, and you can hear it when I'm talking about it. So that was really key when I was looking for new jobs. But I think the other thing, and I recognize this as a luxury, but finding a product that
Mhm.
you really enjoy using and
Mhm.
you're enthusiastic about is going to not only help you, help them hire you, but also help you shine in the
Yep.
position once you're actually there. And also your network knowing what those products are, right? Because when I was, interviewing uh,
Mhm.
and trying to leave Tesla, I was looking for jobs within the literary space or the restaurant space. And one of my managers at Zillow was actually the one that reached out to me and was like, "You love hiking. Like, what if you applied to All Trails?" And I was like, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, you're so right, Nina." So making sure that your network knows what kind of jobs you want, I think, can also
Uh-huh.
help you kind of gain those
Yeah.
key skills and to get your dream job.
If you were going to be giving advice to people who are kind of just starting off in their recruiting journey for PM, let's say they've taken the course, or
Yeah.
let's say they have experience from college, or they have 2 years of software engineering experience and now they want to switch over to product. What is your advice and
Mhm.
your tips for actively recruiting and kind of breaking in?
Yeah. I would say rotational programs are definitely your best friend,
Yeah.
especially flexible ones where you're going to be really well supported. So it doesn't have to be an APM program. I
Hmm.
think any business or marketing program can be a great intro into product, and ones where you're going to build a great network. You have a really great manager that'll support you. Are truly ones to look out for, and I got really lucky with that at Zillow, because it met all of those
Yeah.
qualifications.
Yeah.
But then also, if that's not something you want to do or you can do, like what are product skills you can gain in your job right now? Right? Like,
Yeah.
can you do user research? Can you run a project end to end and talk about how you advocated for it? Can
Hmm.
you speak to how you've communicated cross functionally across multiple teams? So, getting a sense of, yeah, what are the product skills you're going to need for that APM or PM role, and then finding ways to actually build those within your current job, I think is the best way to help break in.
What is your advice on how do I be the one to, stand out and break through for that role?
Yeah, yeah. I think it just comes back to we both said how when we worked on products that we really loved,
Hmm.
it showed in our work, right? So being able to display genuine enthusiasm for the product, I think will take you so far beyond other applicants. When I came into like my first like coffee chat off of a LinkedIn DM with the director at All Trails, I came with a list of 5 improvements I had for the feature, right? Because I
Yeah.
love the app so much, and I was like, "Have you guys thought about this?" So I
Hmm.
think showing that at every step of the interview process will really help. But then also the fact that product is so cross functional will also come up
Hmm.
in their interviews, right? You're probably going to be interviewing with analytics teams and data science teams and design teams. And so either being able to speak to your previous experience or previous knowledge of that team will be helpful if you've worked on projects with them in the past. But if you haven't, like showing a genuine humility and
Hmm.
empathy and willingness to learn about those functions, I think will take you very, very far. Because at the end of the day, like PMs just have to be great collaborators, and that's all folks are looking for. Um, is someone that's not going to be a jackass to work with. And so I think that'll
Yeah.
also really, really take you far, especially within those more cross-functional interviews.
Yeah, no, plus one, plus a million on that. And then kind of to close it off, looking ahead, where do you see the future of the PM role going in terms of like how it's going to change? Maybe both at B2C, B2B companies, or just more generally, like, is there improvements you think could be made to how PM functions? Or do you see like a big trend happening that folks can get on the wave of?
Yeah. Um, love my job, and there's not much I would change about it right now. But one thing I have missed about my time at Zillow is how closely product management and marketing work together.
Uh-huh.
I really miss being able to kind of help determine what our go-to-market messaging would be, and creating a really beautiful message for a feature we were able to sell. And I think that's a trend that I'm noticing. I was listening to I think a interview that Brian Chesky gave, who's
Yeah.
the current CEO of Airbnb, and he was talking about how Airbnb had moved towards combining their product management and product marketing orgs entirely, so that a
Yeah.
PM was both at the same time.
Yeah.
And his point was that you can't really build a product unless you know how to market it and how to sell it. And it comes
Yeah.
back to that like leading by influence thing, right? Like you need to be able to
Yeah.
kind of um, lead by that no matter what. So I don't know if it'll work for every org, but I think that's one really interesting way I've seen the PM career change in the time that I've been here.
Yeah. I think the first big company to make that change was Apple because for so long they didn't even have like a
Mm,
quote unquote product manager role. It was all done through worldwide marketing
right,
and design. I think now they have PMs in their services division, but um, I definitely agree with that trend that I'm seeing more job descriptions listing out like, oh, you're going to work on acquisition. That used to be something that was pretty much
right.
only over on marketing, but certainly product plays a role in. Manu, thanks so much for the your time. I love the insights you have to share, the anecdotes, and I can tell you're super passionate about the PM role. So, is there anything you want people who are going to be listening to know? Is there anything that you want to shamelessly plug that people should follow you or see catch up with what you're working on? Anything like that?
Um, No, not really. We're gonna have a lot of really cool features come out on All Trails in the next few months, so keep an eye out for stuff that we're shipping. So yeah, look out for that. Otherwise,
Cool.
I think that's it.
Awesome.